Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. As Sylvia mentioned, we're going to go ahead and present on Regional Center Services for Adult. And as you can see, that's for adults ages 21 and over. Next slide, please. Okay. As I was just introduced, I am Jasmine Zinnerman. I am the Consumer Services Director for our San Fernando Valley, and I oversee our adult transition, forensics, special incident reporting, and federal revenue departments. We also have joining us today Salma Boyle, who is our consumer services supervisor in adult unit in San Fernando. And then we also have Jacqueline Kashishian, who's also our consumer services supervisor in the adult unit in San Fernando Valley. I also wanted to introduce Marlene Vargas, who is our aging adult specialist. She might be on today, however, she's not going to present, but I did want to let people know that she has joined our team. She's only been with us a couple of months, but she's training and she's eager and excited to be here. Next slide, please. Okay. Gonna go ahead and turn it over.
Thank you, Jasmine. As Jasmine mentioned, my name is Jacqueline Kashishian. I'm a supervisor with the adult department. So at North Los Angeles County Regional Center, we have different departments and we serve individuals in different age groups. We have our early start, which is birth to third birthday, school age, which is 3 to 13, transition age, which is the 14 to 21 years of age, and then the adult department, which is where me and Sloma work. And that's 21 and older. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we do have a lot of different services we provide in the adult department. We have respite, and we'll go individually in all of these to explain a bit more about each one, but we have respite, daycare, personal assistant, adaptive skills, behavioral intervention, crisis intervention, clinical services, durable medical equipment, social skills, day programs, or any sort of community integration program. We have employment, independent living, supported living, placement and residential options, and then specialized transportation. Next slide, please. Respite services for individuals that reside at home with their family. Respite services are really there to support the family in ensuring that the individuals that are taking care of the consumers have their needs met as well. So this gives the family some time to go to their own self-care, their own individual needs that they need to attend to. So that's what respite provides for our consumers and their families. The number of hours that are approved for respite services really are dependent upon how many hours of generic resources like IHSS does the individual have, how many other hours of support does this individual have. And like all of our services, it's really contingent on the need of the individual. So we create a little chart, we look at everything, we make sure that this will support the individual, and then we're happy to always put the service in if it meets that need. Next slide, please. Thank you. Daycare option. Daycare is for individuals that have family, that live with their family, and let's say the mom or the dad or whoever the family member is goes to work and won't be there to take care of that individual. Daycare services are put in during those times of employment that the parent might have, and we have someone that comes in to watch over, make sure they have their needs met, and there are no major health and safety needs that are not being met. The number of hours that we allocate for daycare services, again, very much like respite, we look at, what are the needs, how much support is needed, how much other supports are put in, and then based off of that, we're always happy to put in daycare if it meets that need. Next slide, please. Personal assistant. Personal assistant services are services that really support the individual that, for bathing, for getting dressed, for preparing meals, toileting. It has a very wide spectrum of different types of services that personal assistants might support with. And we're always very mindful about making sure we have, is this maybe we need an LVN, maybe we need a behavioral support, maybe it's adaptive skills. So really being mindful of what type of personal assistant is needed, and then going ahead and making sure if there's that need, we make sure that that need is met. And I think we have an example here, may include consumers who require a 2-person training. So if they need, if they have a Hoyer lift or if they're on a wheelchair and need to have support with moving the individual, that could warrant a personal assistant support that we can put in. Next slide, please. Adaptive skills training. Adaptive skills really teaches individuals on how to cook, house chores. Sometimes it's brushing your teeth or managing money or crossing the street. Whatever skills the individual needs, our consumers need, that's what adaptive skills really looks at. And before we put the adaptive skills in, we really try to create goals because it's all person-centered. So what are the different areas that we want to hit? What are the goals for this particular individual, that things that they want to work on for their adaptive skills? And what's the timeline? And keeping track of that and making sure that we don't just create goals, but we follow through with them and we make sure that those goals are met, or maybe we need to continue working on them, or hey, maybe sometimes we need to change those goals. So that's what adaptive skills really looks at. Next slide, please.
My computer is having some issues. If you could just hold on 1 minute, I need to log back into the VDI. My apologies.
No worries. Sure. Adaptive skills can be very helpful in the sense that for some individuals where they really want to focus on these skills, that individual can come in whenever we put the service in and really specifically focus on that specific skill. We've seen a lot of growth. We always try to assess, is this a service we want to continue? And sometimes when we have certain goals in place and they excel at that and they do well with the adaptive skills, and there's other services which I'll go into talking more about, that can be, we could transition to that other program like independent living services, if that's a goal that they have, that down the line, they want to live independently.
Really quick, thanks, Jacqueline. It's Jasmine. Really quickly, while Jennifer's logging back in, I saw a question in the chat that was asking if this is only for San Fernando Valley. No, this is not only for San Fernando Valley. This is for the agency as a whole.
And we're at behavioral intervention. Wonderful. Behavioral intervention is making sure that if someone has any behavioral needs, we can put that type of service in. Keep in mind, this is specifically, we're talking about adult consumers. So something that we can put in is ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis Services in place. And a lot of that, of course, we consult with our behavioral team and to make sure we're meeting the needs that the individual has. And we're always happy to put in a behavioral supports in place if that's what the need is for that individual. And an example of this can be changes through behavioral intervention, like aggression, destroying property, or running away. It's always, person-centered, depending on the individual, the type of support they need. And if they need behavioral intervention services, then we'll work to see if that's something we can put in for that individual. Next slide, please. Thank you. Crisis intervention services, as it mentions here, we have our mobile crisis team, Cbem, and they serve just all our 3 valleys. So we have Santa Clarita, we have Antelope Valley, and then we have San Fernando Valley. And Cbem is our crisis intervention team. And if there's any sort of crises that come up, we work with them so we can put their services in place. And they'll be the one to contact if a crisis occurs, they'll be the ones to contact and support the individual, alleviate any of those issues that they're having, or try to figure out a solution and kind of be that middleman between the individual and regional center if we can't in person be there or call or whatever the situation might be. Next slide, please. Thank you. Clinical services. This might include nursing or behavioral, because we do go our clinical team for behavioral as well at times, because you might have a situation where there might be behavioral outbursts because of medication or clinical reasoning. So we do consult with both teams. So clinical services, we go into support and making sure we have like an LV and an RN, any type of supports that they need to assess that that's the appropriate level of care, appropriate type of service they need, and then we'll go ahead and put that service in to meet that need. Example of clinical services needs are consumers who have medical needs and need nursing level support in addition to their generic resources. And I think that's a very great point that it brings up, because we always try to work with any generic resources the individual has and try to make sure we are working hand in hand. Next slide, please. And I'm going to hand it over to Soma. So I believe you are on mute.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sulma Bol, and I am a supervisor for the adult department. Buenas tardes, me llamo Zulma Bol y soy supervisora para el departamento de adultos. So I am going to talk about determination of level of care, and that's LVN, and it's a licensed vocational nurse, and they provide basic nursing care for consumers with medical needs, and there is a supervision of an RN, which is a registered nurse. Behavioral level, professional trained staff to provide support to address behavioral challenges in various settings. And then we have non-medical. There is no need for specified medical or behavioral support to assist consumer in daily living skills. Some of the things that they do look at, it's medications. Those individuals that have G-tubes, catheters, checking vital signs, and monitor seizures activities. And next, please. And I am going to hand it back to Jacqueline.
Alrighty, so durable medical equipment. This is really special equipment and medical related supplies that individual might need. And for adults, of course, it could vary. It could be diapers, mobility equipment, adaptive equipment. For all of these, we really look at, like everything else, it's all, you know, person-centered, case by case. And if an individual needs this level of support, we're always happy to, there's some documentation we might request for each of these, but the CSC will be the point person. And once you contact the CSC and we obtain the documentation that's required, we're always happy to make sure we have appropriate durable medical equipment made available. Next slide, please. Social skills training. Social skills training is services that we have. It's really a wide spectrum when you look at social skills training, because in social skills training, you have an individual on how to interact with one individual, how to interact with multiple individuals, and how to interact with yourself. So we have skills and we have programs that we have in place that will teach these skills based on the need. And what I always recommend is talking to the CSC and really identifying what type of social skills the individual wants to work on. And based on that, they could support in identifying which programs might be available for that and which vendors we have that can provide that. Skills include initiating conversations with others, greeting others, using appropriate eye contact, understanding others' emotions and gestures. We do have this service, and I think it's very beneficial for a lot of individuals that we serve. So we're always happy to support with that. Next slide, please. Thank you. Adult Day Program and integration. So Adult Day Program helps enhance the quality of meaningful day-to-day promoting community integration. And a lot of what I'm really excited about is a lot of our vendors have community integration kind of part of their program, which allows individuals to go into community and really experience what it is to be within our community and the opportunities available. Day programs can be community-based or site-based. We do have some that are site-based. And the great thing about that is that, you know, for some people, community-based is an option that they want to employ, and for others, site-based feels like something that they prefer. So it really depends on the individual and what they want to experience. And it depends on the person-centered planning. And again, going to CSC and having that conversation and being honest about really what your preferences are. We have community integration, creative arts, and mobile in-home program options. And what's wonderful about this is that it really allows you to tailor the mobile in-home programs, or really the creative arts or community integrations, tailor programs based on the needs of the individual. Next slide, please. And I believe this is Soma.
Yeah. The next slide talks about employment programs. At Nlacrc, our value is for everyone who's eligible for employment and wants employment to help that person reach their goal. There are several ways in which we do this. One of them is day programs that offer employment and training, group employment services, individualized employment services, comparative integrated employment, and paid internship program. Next, please. Comparative integrated employment assists individuals with developmental disabilities to be competitively employed in integrated work settings in a high priority. Competitive employment means that the individual is eligible for the same level of benefits provided to other employees And there are opportunities for advancement that are like those for other employees who are not individuals with disabilities and who have similar positions. Next, please. Paid internship program. To encourage competitive integrated employment opportunities, individuals may participate in paid internships. The internships will be in competitive integrated work environments and will assist in the development of skills that will facilitate paid employment opportunities in the future. And this is along, again, as part of the planning, and the CSCs, the coordinators are always supporting this process. Next slide, please. Supported employment. Supported employment is individualized employment, placement and training with supported services. After identifying personal interests and skills, a job placement is created and the individual works with the job coach who assists with work tasks and learn responsibilities for task completion and work quality. Regional center vendors will assess for the employment need based on the desired job. Regional center vendors will work with you to ensure success on the job. So as you could see, all these services are really individualized for each, are very individualized. Next slide, please. Department of Rehabilitation, also known as DOR. So do you receive services from the regional center? So every individual that is part here, it's a member of the regional center, has access to the Department of Rehabilitation. Some of the things that they look at is if they're receiving services from the regional center, do they want to work? Are they having trouble getting or keeping a job because they need support? Do they need services such as job placement, training, or other job preparation to help them keep a job or advance in employment? If they answer yes to any of these questions, so then they do qualify for DOR services. And this is the information that they could request services. Also, they could go to their coordinators and the coordinators will be able to help them assess this service. And if they're receiving Social Security benefits due to disability or their ticket to work, they are presumed to be also eligible for these services as well. There's an application to be completed, but again, they could access that application either to these to their website, or they could access it by reaching out to their coordinator. So there's various ways to access this application and this service. Next. Independent living skills. So independent living skills can help individuals move from the family home into a new setting, or may be provided in the family home or a facility in preparation to move into their own home. This service helps with cooking, cleaning, shopping, meal preparation, money management, use of public transportation, hygiene, social skills, and safety skills. And it's also known as ILS. Next slide, please. Supported living skill services, known as SLS. This service provides supports to those individuals who rent, own, or lease their own place. SLS is a support program that considers the individual's needs to live independently. Consumers with this service, they have the freedom to make their own choices and manage their services. Next slide, please. Placement and residential living. At North Los Angeles, we have a placement review team that supports the program planning team in identifying placement and community living options. Residential living options can vary for each person, depending on their medical and behavioral support needs. And this is when the level of care comes into place that Jacqueline talked about previously. And some options include different levels of licensed homes. And these homes go through level from 1 to 4, which means that each level indicates additional staffing on programming, or it depends on the needs of each individual as well. Next slide, please. Placement and residential living. There are also a variety of other options that begin to increase the types of supports to ensure the medical or behavioral needs that are supported. So one of them, it's specialized residential facilities, also known as SRF, enhanced behavioral support homes, intermediate care facilities, adult residential for persons with specialized healthcare needs, family home agencies, community crisis homes. And some consumers also reside in residential settings for the elderly or skilled nursing facilities, SNFs. Next slide, please. We also have specialized transportation. So regional centers offer a variety of options to help consumer access the community when they're unable to do so on their own. Some of these options include family member paid transportation, medical transportation and non-medical transportation, and assistance accessing public transportation, such as a taxi or a city bus. Next slide, please. So other available participants directed options. Next slide, please. So one, it's self-determination program. The self-determination program allows participants the opportunity to have more control of developing their service plans and selecting service providers of their choice that better meet their needs. If you guys are interested in this program, the informational meetings are online, and these are the dates of when they're taking place: February 7, 2022, March 7, and April 4th. And again, the information to attend these meetings are on our website. Participant-directed services. Participant-directed services provides consumers the option to exercise more direction over how and by whom services are provided, including choosing, scheduling, and supervising workers. Participant-directed services are applicable to the following services: Respite, and next to each of the service, there's a service code. Because if you do decide to do this service, you're going to become more familiar with those service codes. Daycare, which is service code 455, transportation, service code 470, nursing, service code 460, and community-based training service for adults, 475, and temporary due to COVID, personal assistance, supported employment, and independent living skills. Next slide, please. Generic resources. A generic resource has legal responsibility to serve qualified individuals and receives public funds to provide those services. Some examples of these generic resources include the school district, medical, and home supportive services, also known as IHSS, Social Security, and Department of Rehabilitation, DOR, that I spoke about earlier. Next slide, please. And now I am going to transfer these to Jasmine.
Yes, thanks, Selma. So here that was our information about adult services. However, this is web resources for additional information. So the first website is DDS, Department of Developmental Services. And then there's an option to search legislative bills there, gives you the information to type in. We also have ARCA, Association of Regional Center Agencies. Then we have the North LA homepage, and then Disability Rights California as well. And then at the bottom, please don't forget the North LA Resource Library is by appointment. You can do that through your service coordinator or through the publications department. Next slide, please. We also want to mention our great parent mentors. Victoria Gerard serves our San Fernando and Santa Clarita Valleys, and then her contact information is listed, and the parent mentor hotline. And then for our Antelope Valley, Celine serves our Antelope Valley, and then also the email address is listed there, and it's parentmentor@northlacrc.org. Okay, so we've reached the end of our presentation, and this is the time where we're going to take questions.
Jasmine, there is a question. A person has their hand raised. Adat, I'm going to allow them to speak. Okay. Adad, can you please turn on your microphone? Adad. Okay, we will also have 5 questions on the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. If you see the Q&A, you want to go ahead and read the questions, or would you like me to read them?
If you can read them, that's fine.
Sure.
Thanks.
First question from Adad. I have a disability and staff don't understand me sometimes. I need a job. How can I get one if no one is helping me?
What I would suggest in regards to this is always connecting with your CSC. Seeing if there's something they can do to support with that, because I'm not exactly sure what services you have in place, but maybe they can look to see the appropriate services are in place and that you're getting the support that you need. So I would always say speak with your CSC and try to resolve it in that way. And your CSC could always hold a meeting with the current services you have to kind of see what is the missing piece there and how can we make sure that you are getting the support you need. Jasmine or Soma, is there anything you'd like to add?
Also, the CSC could serve as a middle person if you want to meet with someone from the Department of Rehabilitation, DOR, to support with the communication. There's other ways that we could find resources and ways for you to communicate with other people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Rosie. Can you share how families can access CBEM in a crisis situation?
Sure. In a crisis situation, if you want to contact Cbem, so typically during the day, you may contact your CSC, you may contact the officer of the day, and they can support you in getting in contact. Or if you're calling after hours, we do have an after hours officer, and they can support you in getting in contact with Cbem. So you could contact us and we'll put you in touch with them. Soma or Jasmine, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. That was good.
Thank you for the question.
Next question was also from Rosie. Can you share, are there free advocates? This is from Sarah. Are there free advocates for consumers when regional center is failing or not doing what is in the best interest for the consumer?
I'll take that. If you're having trouble, if you're not feeling like you're getting what you need, Disability Rights California, we have been listed as a web resource. They have a client's rights advocate, and you can reach out and discuss, and they can consult and provide assistance there. And then if you're struggling with, if it's your service coordinator whom you're struggling to reach, you can reach out to their supervisor. You can reach out to the director. As I mentioned, I'm the director for our San Fernando Valley. We have Gabi Estrada, who is our director for the Santa Clarita Valley and Antelope Valley. And then for our school age and early start, we have Christina Cruz. So please know that we're available to, if you're having trouble reaching people, please reach out. And then we have our on-duty specialists as well.
Next question from Sasha J. Any help with getting power of attorney?
So on that one, I was the same suggestion would be with Disability Rights California, contacting Client's Rights Advocate and working with them. Or there are also some, I know in our Consumer Family Resource Guide that we sent out, there are also some free legal aid and agencies that may be able to help with that.
The next question also from Sasha J. Are there free advocates for consumers when regional center is failing or not doing what is in the best interest for the consumer?
I think I think that's the same question. I think that's what we answered, and that was
Sorry.
That's okay. No. Just reiterating, that's disability rights, the client's right advocate there.
Okay, and also from Sasha, any free advocates for consumers? Oh, that's exactly same question. I'm sorry. I just got posted twice. That's all the answers, all the questions we have there.
Actually, I see one in Spanish from Sylvia Serna. Can I go ahead and translate that one?
Yes.
So she has a daughter that's 23 years old. She hasn't received any services prior, and she's been waiting for a month for her day program to be approved. And she hasn't spoken to the service coordinator. And how long does these usually take? So should I just go ahead and answer it? Okay. Silvia, lo primero es tratar de comunicarse con su coordinadora. Si no puedes, no ha estado, no se ha podido lograr comunicar con ella, puede llamarle a la supervisora. Usualmente ahorita, el problema ahorita que estamos teniendo con los programas del día es que algunos están cerrados por la pandemia, han estado yendo de regreso a dar los servicios en persona o si no los dan por Zoom. Eso es uno de los problemas que hemos tenido ahorita durante la pandemia. Pero como digo, si no se puede comunicar con la coordinadora, trate de hablar con la supervisora. Ojalá esto ojalá estoy dando la respuesta correcta. And that's it for me.
I'm wondering, was that translated in English? Yeah, okay.
Suma, would you mind answering that in English as well? So
Yes.
Thank you.
So the information I gave her is, for one, she's unable to contact the coordinator to please reach out to the supervisor. I also give a little bit of information of the challenges we're having right now with day programs, of them going back to seeing people in person or doing services remotely due to the pandemic. And I also gave her the information of it shouldn't take that long, but again, just to contact the supervisor if she's unable to get a hold of the coordinator.
We do have a hand up from Christina and Johnny. Christina and Johnny, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hi, thank you. Yes. So I have a couple questions, and I think one of them was in the Q&A, but I think it got answered. I don't think it got answered by a different question. So I think the answer in the Q&A is not related to what I asked. So I had a couple of questions about paid internship programs. One is, if somebody is volunteering at a job right now or an organization, and the organization wants to have them do a paid internship program, what is the process for that? That's one of my questions. And then along with PIP, a paid internship program, if somebody needs assistance at the volunteering, would they then need to have supported employment as a service that is added in, or is there a different support service that they would need to have in their IPP if they're going to do a paid internship program? And then I have just two other quick questions. Is what kind of mental health services are available for Regional Center adult consumers? I know there's a huge need for that. Are there any support groups yet created or being created? What kind of support is that is for in that realm? And then is specialized transportation provided by a family member different than participant-directed transportation provided by a family member? Because we requested participant-directed transportation like 9 months ago, and we're still waiting to get that approved. I didn't know about the specialized transportation, so if you could just explain the difference between that, if there is a difference, that'd be great. And thank you. It's a very informative webinar.
Christina, thank you for your questions. I'm going to call a lifeline. Gabby Estradi, as I mentioned, she's on the line. She's the director of our branch offices, the Santa Clarita and Antelope Valley, because I don't quite know the answer to your first question. Your second question, I know you asked about if someone needs support at the internship. They would not need to do, what they could do is the vendor that they're working for could request 055 to be concurrent, to run concurrent to the paid internship program. And then to talk, I know you asked a question about mental health resources and support groups. That is something that, as you mentioned, is very significant and the need is there. So I think Jacqueline was the one who talked about our Cbem services right now. And then we are assessing and looking at different support groups.
And for mental health services, I like to also add that we typically ask individuals to utilize their generic resources or their healthcare provider to get like the counseling and things of that nature. We do have one or two very few vendors that provide this service, but typically we request individuals use generic resources first.
Next question we have on the Q&A, it's again from Sasha. Can children under 3 be evaluated for autism before they reach 3, or is it mandatory to wait for the eval once they are close to 3?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sure. Can children under 3 be evaluated for autism before they reach 3, or is it mandatory to wait for the eval once they are close to 3?
I will take that question. I don't want to give you wrong information, so I don't want to answer it incorrectly, but I will take that question and get an answer. Because and I'm sorry, I'm just not quite sure. That would not be adult services, and so like I said, I don't want to give you wrong information, but I'll take the question of if they have to wait until they're 3 to be diagnosed.
Next question, also from Sasha. What happens when there isn't a provider for your child, but their time is running out, and if they're going 2 or going on 3, the early intervention time is being wasted waiting around? Does Regional Center pay private companies if they can't afford anyone for the consumer?
And that would be, again, that's just because of the different age groups. We can take that question. That's a question that would be for early start school age. And I can research and get you an answer on that.
We have a question from our executive director. We're going to allow her to speak. Ruth, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, did it work?
You did, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. All right. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share some information, some additional information regarding Regional Center support for helping adults access mental health services. So because we're required as a regional center to exhaust generic resources before we would be able to provide a service, we first must seek out the services of those entities that have a responsibility to provide them. So when it comes to mental health, that's the Department of Mental Health. And so we have a liaison that meets with our team quarterly to collaborate on, to help adults access those services. And as mentioned by staff, there are circumstances where we have adults that are not eligible for mental health services through DMH, or may not have health insurance that would provide that from another source. And in those cases, then the regional center is able to provide funding or to secure that service to support the well-being and mental health of the adults that we serve. So I just wanted to share that information with the group. Thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Ruth.
We have another question from CP has their hand up. CP, would you please unmute yourself?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Christina Prus. I am the Early Start School Age Supervisor, and I'm glad to be here as part of this wonderful town hall. And I know that there was a couple of questions with regards to Early Start, so I just wanted to provide that information. With regards to the eligibility prior to age 3, it doesn't have to wait until age 3. If your child is within the Early Start program, usually the process starts at 2.6, 2.9. When the child is at that age, we provide our clinical department with the parent consent. We provide the clinical department with all the documentation that we have, including medical records, and an assessment is provided so that by the time the child turns 3, they will be able to determine eligibility. As some of you may know now, we also have a very great program, which it is the Provisional Eligibility Program, which it is for children 3 to 5-year-olds that they not necessarily met the criteria for the Lanterman eligibility, which means that they were not found to have autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, ID, intellectual disability, or something else related to intellectual disability. However, what we find is that there are some children that they still need some type of services between the ages of 3 to 5, and they're meeting some of the criteria of some deficits within certain areas that the department has authorized according to our regulations. However, if you do have a child that is less than 2.5 and you have a private psychologist that does conduct standardized tests to determine if your child has autism, you can bring that report to our department, to our Early Start department, service coordinator. We can forward that to the clinical department, and they will review and determine and provide that as part of the documentation to determine eligibility under the qualification of autism. So hopefully that is the information, but if you need further information, please don't hesitate to contact your Early Start service coordinator. If you do not have a service coordinator, you are not in the Early Start system, you can always contact us and ask to speak with the manager of the Early Start department, and she can provide you with more information on that. With regards to services, if there is nowhere to be found and the child is of the age of 2, closer to 3, again, that's a conversation that please have with your service coordinator with regards to the challenges finding a provider through your insurance. And we can, the service coordinator, along with the supervisor, we will review the case and determine what will be the best option at that time, because quite a lot of the providers that we have in our system for Early Start, they work with medical insurance. So there might be an option there. But again, that's a discussion that needs to be had as part of your individualized family service planning. Hopefully this helped. And thank you.
Thank you, Christina. We have a question on the Q&A from Garciela Marquez. What do you do when you already have service, for instance, ILS, but you do not get a total hours from the vendor?
I think this is something that's definitely important to review with the CSE, because I'm curious as to why you're not receiving the hours. Is it that the vendor doesn't have enough staff? Is it that you don't want to utilize this number of hours? So it would be always best to connect with the service coordinator to kind of review and indicate exactly why the hours are not being used, and kind of brainstorm with them to see what the possible options are. So I guess there's a few additional questions to answer before we could identify a resolution for this.
We have a hand up from Gabriela Esradi. Gabby, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hello, thank you. I am Gabby Ashrati, Consumer Services Director with North LA County Regional Center. And I know that there were a few questions, so I want to add a little bit about the mental health. We have excellent resources through Department of Mental Health, through the whole person services that encompasses all areas of life, from living options to employment. So that is a generic resource that we often use. They also have other programs like the Full Scope Partnership Program that provides crisis level intervention and crisis level housing and psychiatric care, even in the community when the psychiatrist and medications are needed for individuals. So I wanted to make sure that you also are aware, as mentioned, we have a liaison to Department of Mental Health where we can refer cases and also help collaborate with them to find solutions and alternatives and supports for consumers. And many times we also will have a team from the Department of Mental Health that has responded in certain situations. And we do program planning and we'll try to include them as well if they're available. So I wanted to make sure that I had addressed the mental health services questions. Are there any other questions in that regard?
There don't seem to be any other questions there. There's one comment from Christina and Johnny.
Okay, and I know Christina had a few questions and my name was mentioned, so can we unmute Christina so that she can ask whatever questions may have not been responded to earlier? I'm not certain if there was one about transportation, so we can review the transportation question as well.
Hi,
course.
Gabby. Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you, you and Ruth both for the mental health clarification. It's really important. So thank you for providing that guidance. So I had just a quick question about the difference between specialized transportation provided by a family member and participant directed transportation by a family member, what the difference is in that. And then the other thing is if they we had talked about paid internship programs. If someone is going into self-determination and they're volunteering at an organization and they're not with a day program, how does that work if the organization wants to hire them or have them do a paid internship program? How does that work? What does that organization or that business need to do in order to offer that paid internship program to that consumer participant?
Christina, I'm going to take your first question, make sure that I understand it, and then I'll answer the second question, but you may need to repeat it. For the first question, it was about transportation, and you had a question, how does that work with the family providing the transportation and the different methods of funding that for the family to transport? We can do that through the traditional service system, through mileage reimbursement for the parent to transport the consumer to and from day program services, or through what was determined with IPP planning. I want to make sure that everyone's aware that when we do IPP planning for transportation services, we look at the need and we look at the capacity of the individual to be able to utilize first generic transportation, which includes systems like access transportation, the public bus system, the rideshare programs, the door-to-door programs through many transportation systems, the MetroLink. So there's quite a few generic resources, and we want to first assess the ability for the individual to use that system. And sometimes we have an individual that could possibly use the system, however, needs some training. So we will implement independent living services to assist with training that individual to use that public transportation. We find sometimes it's very important for them to have the skills so they can move forward with areas of their life like employment, supported employment services, and be able to have that flexibility to get to different places that they need to go throughout the community. Access transportation provides door-to-door services. And then we have medical services that are now required to provide medical transportation for direct medical care and auxiliary services. If we find that the individual requires specialized transportation, we do have a vendored service for all valleys to provide transportation door to door to that program. If we find that that is not a service that can be used or there's a different preference, then an individual can be provided with reimbursement through mileage. And both the participant directed services program and the direct mileage reimbursement both need to go through an FMS service. And it depends on the family, the consumer, on which one is their choice. The participant directed services, you are the direct employer with services that are reimbursed with FMS through our traditional, you would not be the employer. It's a reimbursement process. Both are similar, but a little different. Did I answer that for you, Christina?
Yes, thank you, Gabby. Yeah.
Okay.
And then did you want me to go over the last?
The next question that you had was regarding participant directed, paid internship program. A paid internship program is just that. It's an internship where the employer receives up to 1,040 hours pay reimbursed back to them. That just changed as of July 16th, where prior it was 10,400 that was reimbursed back to the employer. Now it's set at an hourly rate where hours are reimbursed. That particular program is not one where it's concurrent to supported employment services through Department of Rehabilitation. It's not considered employment, it's considered an internship. And at times when employers identify that they are offering that internship to the individual, there is times where the individual also needs some job coaching. And the job coaching then is funded through North LA or the Regional Center. And it's job coaching through one of our vendors in our traditional system. And in the self-determination program, it is funded under job coaching. Christina, did I answer that for you?
So thank you, Gabby, that was helpful. One just last component to it. So if there's a person in self-determination that's volunteering and wants to do paid internship program, and the company is fine with them doing a paid internship program, what does the company or the organization need to do to hire that person to do a paid internship program if they're in self-determination?
Right now we primarily have done that through the traditional service where we link them to a vendor that procures that paid internship program. So we can work with you if we have an employer that's offering the paid internship program. It needs to be funded through that FMS for the self-determination program to reimburse those wages. And through the IPP planning, we can develop the system in which it would be planned.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any further questions on the Q&A. And I just checked the chat. I don't see anything else or hands up. Jasmine?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Ruth, for helping answer those questions and providing that valuable feedback and input. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And please take care and stay safe and have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as a reminder, please do not click end at the end of this webinar. When we say goodbye, a brief survey will appear on your screens. We do thank you in advance for taking a couple of minutes to answer that. Have a great afternoon, everyone.